The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystalline floor, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadows that seemed to swallow light itself. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, each area carefully designed to accommodate their unique physiological needs. The Zephyrians floated in their gas-filled bubbles, their tentacles weaving patterns of anticipation. The rock-like granites sat motionless, their boulder-shaped forms betraying no emotion. The insectoid chitinous clicked their mandibles in nervous rhythms. At the center of this magnificent assembly sat the High Council of Five, the most ancient and powerful species in the known galaxy. They had ruled for over 10,000 years, maintaining peace through strength and wisdom that younger species could barely comprehend. Today, however, their attention was focused on the newest addition to their galactic community: humanity. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone in the speaking circle, a simple podium rising from the floor around her. She wore a basic diplomatic uniform, dark blue with minimal decoration. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her brown eyes surveyed the assembled aliens with calm professionalism. To most observers, she appeared unremarkable, even fragile compared to the towering Zephyrians or the armored chitinous. The High Counselor Vexhari, a being that resembled a cross between a serpent and a bird of prey, leaned forward on his golden perch. His scales shimmered with an oily rainbow pattern, and his voice carried the weight of millennia when he spoke. The species calling itself humanity has requested membership in our Galactic Council, Vexhari announced, his words translating perfectly through the universal communication system. They claim to represent a civilization worthy of our attention, yet our scouts report they have barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Their homeworld shows signs of recent warfare and environmental damage. Their technology is primitive by our standards. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The chitinous clicked disapproval, while the Zephyrians' tentacles writhed with what their body language experts would recognize as disdain. Sarah remained perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back. Counselor Thesara, whose crystalline form refracted light into beautiful patterns across the chamber floor, spoke next. Their species shows disturbing tendencies toward violence and self-destruction. Our anthropological teams have documented over 15,000 wars in their recorded history. They have weapons capable of destroying their own planet multiple times over. Why should we allow such a destructive force into our peaceful alliance? The third counselor, Morden of the granite species, rumbled like an avalanche when he added his voice. Furthermore, they lack the mental discipline necessary for galactic civilization. Our psychic evaluations show chaotic thought patterns, emotional instability, and an alarming tendency toward individual action rather than collective wisdom. They are barely more evolved than the primitive species we monitor for research purposes. Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she maintained her diplomatic stance. She had been specifically chosen for this mission not just for her languages and cultural knowledge, but for her ability to remain calm under pressure. The Council's words were not unexpected. Humanity had faced skepticism and hostility from several species during their first tentative steps into galactic society. The fourth counselor, Zekthos, whose gaseous form constantly shifted colors to reflect his emotional state, now glowed a deep purple that indicated contempt. Perhaps most telling is their laughably short lifespan. How can beings who live barely a century understand the long-term consequences of galactic policy? They would make decisions based on immediate gratification rather than the careful planning required for interstellar governance. Finally, the fifth and eldest counselor, Eonsworm, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. His form was difficult to describe, seeming to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, causing observers to see different aspects depending on their angle of view. The evidence is overwhelming. This species is not ready for galactic citizenship. They are violent, short-sighted, technologically primitive, and mentally unstable. We recommend they return to their homeworld and attempt to evolve beyond their current limitations. Perhaps in 10,000 years, they might be ready to join civilized society. The chamber erupted in sounds of agreement. Chitinous mandibles clicked approval, Zephyrian tentacles waved in complex patterns of assent, and the granite representatives added their rumbling endorsement. Even species that had remained neutral throughout the discussion seemed swayed by the overwhelming consensus. Sarah waited for the noise to subside before requesting permission to speak. When Counselor Vexhari granted it with obvious reluctance, she stepped forward to the edge of the speaking circle. "Honored counselors," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, "I have listened to your assessment of humanity with great interest. You speak of our violence, our short lives, our primitive technology, and our chaotic minds. You paint us as barely evolved savages unworthy of your attention." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "I will not insult your intelligence by denying these observations. Humans are indeed violent. We have fought wars that scarred our world and cost millions of lives. We are short-lived by your standards, rarely seeing more than 100 years. Our technology, while advancing rapidly, cannot compare to species that have had millennia to develop. And our minds, yes, they are chaotic, driven by emotions and individual desires that often conflict with logical collective action." The chamber had grown completely silent. Even the Zephyrian's tentacles had stopped their constant motion. "However," Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength, "you have made a critical error in your evaluation. You have confused these traits for weaknesses when they are, in fact, our greatest strengths. You see violence where we see the willingness to fight for what we believe in. You see short lives where we see the urgency to accomplish great things quickly. You see primitive technology where we see rapid innovation and adaptation. You see chaos where we see creativity and individual initiative." Counselor Vexhari's scales began to shift toward darker hues, indicating irritation. "Pretty words cannot change facts, human. Your species' history of violence and destruction speaks for itself." Sarah smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she moved her hands from behind her back. She held up her right hand, fingers spread, then slowly closed her hand until only her index finger remained extended. "You want to see what humanity is capable of when truly motivated?" she asked quietly. "You want to understand what makes us different from every other species in this chamber?" The gesture seemed absurd to most observers. A single finger raised in what appeared to be either a pointing motion or perhaps some form of primitive communication. Several species representatives began making sounds that their translators rendered as laughter. "With this one finger," Sarah said, her voice now carrying an edge that made the laughter fade, "I can demonstrate why you should fear insulting humanity far more than you should fear accepting us into your council." The chamber fell into an expectant silence. Even the high counselors leaned forward slightly, curious despite themselves about what this seemingly insignificant human could possibly do with such a simple gesture. Sarah's smile widened, and for the first time, many of the assembled aliens noticed something unsettling in her expression. It was not the look of a desperate petitioner hopping for acceptance. It was the confident smile of someone who held cards that no one else at the table could see. "Computer," she said clearly, "execute authorization Chen Alpha 779er. Target designation, Council Chamber Primary Power Grid. Magnitude, minimal demonstration." The massive chamber's lighting flickered once, went completely dark for 3 full seconds, then returned to normal. In those 3 seconds of absolute darkness, 47 species worth of security personnel went into high alert, weapons were drawn, and emergency protocols activated. When the lights returned, Sarah was still standing calmly in the speaking circle, her index finger still raised. "That," she said into the stunned silence, "was me lifting one finger to touch a button on a device that every human diplomat carries. A device that your security teams failed to detect because you assumed we were too primitive to possess technology you couldn't immediately recognize." The implications hit the chamber like a physical wave. If humans could manipulate the Council's power systems so casually, what else could they do? How had they achieved such technological capability while appearing primitive? Most importantly, what was Sarah really saying with this demonstration? "You see," Sarah continued, her voice now carrying authority that seemed to fill the vast space, "while you have spent 10,000 years maintaining peace through the threat of your superior technology and ancient wisdom, humanity has spent its entire existence learning to survive by being underestimated. We have made an art form of appearing weaker than we are until the moment we choose to reveal our true capabilities." She lowered her finger and clasped her hands behind her back again. That small demonstration affected only the lighting system, but the same technology could have targeted life support, artificial gravity, communication systems, or even structural integrity. The fact that you never detected its presence means that every human ship, every human facility, and every human diplomat in galactic space carries capabilities that your most advanced sensors cannot recognize or counter. The silence in the chamber was now absolute and heavy, with implications that were just beginning to dawn on the assembled representatives. Councillor Vexhari's scales had shifted to deep crimson, a color that indicated both alarm and anger among his species. "Are you threatening the Galactic Council, human?" His voice carried undertones that made several smaller species representatives unconsciously step backward. Sarah shook her head slowly, her expression remaining calm and professional. "No, honored counselor, I am educating you. There is a significant difference, though I understand how someone accustomed to being the most powerful being in any room might confuse the two." The insult was delivered so smoothly, wrapped in such polite language, that it took several seconds for its full impact to register. When it did, the chamber erupted in shocked gasps and angry chittering. No one had spoken to a high counselor with such casual disrespect in living memory. "You dare," Thesara began, her crystalline form now pulsing with angry red light. "I dare to speak truth," Sarah interrupted, her voice cutting through the crystal being's words like a blade. "Which is more than any of you have done regarding humanity. You have based your entire evaluation on surface observations and prejudicial assumptions. You speak of our violence while ignoring our mercy. You mention our wars while overlooking our capacity for peace. You criticize our emotions while failing to recognize that those same emotions drive us to accomplish what pure logic alone never could." She began to pace slowly within the speaking circle, her movement drawing every eye in the chamber. "Allow me to share some facts that your scouts apparently missed during their evaluation of Earth and human space. Facts that might have given you pause before delivering your insulting assessment." Sarah touched a control on her wrist, and a holographic display materialized above the speaking circle. The image showed a star chart with various colored indicators marking different systems. "This is the Terran colonial region as it exists today," she began. 23 star systems, 41 habitable worlds, and approximately 8 billion human citizens spread across hundreds of light years. Your scouts reported that we had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. What they failed to mention is that we accomplished this expansion in less than 50 standard years. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Even by galactic standards, such rapid expansion was impressive, particularly for a species supposedly struggling with basic FTL technology. "But expansion alone means little without context," Sarah continued. The display shifted to show detailed information about individual worlds. "Each of these colonies was established not through conquest or forced migration, but through voluntary settlement programs. We terraform worlds rather than simply claiming the habitable ones. We have developed closed-loop ecological systems that allow us to create sustainable environments on planets that other species would consider completely uninhabitable." The image changed again, now showing comparative technological data. "You criticized our primitive technology, yet our manufacturing capabilities exceed those of any species in this chamber, except the High Council races themselves. We produce more starships per year than the next 5 most advanced species combined. Our industrial output has doubled every 3 years for the past 2 decades. Councillor Mordun's rumbling voice interrupted. "Numbers mean nothing if the quality is inferior. Mass production of inferior goods is hardly impressive." Sarah smiled and touched another control. The display now showed detailed technical specifications. "Our newest exploration vessels incorporate technology that your own engineers would find intriguing. Adaptive hull materials that can reconfigure for optimal performance in any environment. Quantum communication systems that maintain instant contact across galactic distances. And defensive systems that, as I demonstrated moments ago, can interface with and control most known galactic technologies." The silence that followed this revelation was profound. The implications of humans possessing technology that could interact with and potentially control other species' systems sent a chill through the chamber. "However," Sarah continued, "technological achievement alone does not define a civilization's worth. You spoke of our mental instability and chaotic thought patterns. Allow me to address that particular misconception." The display changed to show a complex web of interconnected nodes and data streams. "This is the Human Collective Intelligence Network, established 3 years ago. It connects every human colony, every research station, and every exploration vessel in a real-time information sharing system. When a human scientist on the edge of our territory makes a discovery, that knowledge is instantly available to researchers across our entire civilization. She paused to let the implications sink in. But unlike the rigid hierarchical information systems used by most galactic civilizations, our network preserves and enhances individual creativity rather than suppressing it. Each human contributes unique perspectives while having access to the collective knowledge of our species. What you call chaotic thought patterns, we call cognitive diversity. It allows us to solve problems that purely logical approaches cannot address. The Zephyrian representative, Fluxandra, finally spoke. Her tentacles moved in patterns that indicated deep confusion. If humans possess such advanced capabilities, why do you seek membership in our council? Why not simply establish your own galactic alliance? It was an excellent question, and Sarah had been waiting for someone to ask it. She smiled with genuine warmth for the first time since entering the chamber. Because, she said, despite all our capabilities, we recognize that isolation leads to stagnation. We have spent our entire existence as a species struggling against limitations, fighting to survive and grow. That struggle has made us strong, but it has also taught us the value of cooperation and diverse perspectives. The display shifted again, now showing images of human colonies where multiple species worked side by side. We already have informal alliances with several species not represented in this council. The Kelari, whom you classify as non-sentient, serve as advisors in our agricultural programs because their understanding of planetary ecosystems far exceeds our own. The Vorthak, whom you dismissed as militaristic primitives, have helped us develop defensive strategies that protect not just human worlds, but also the trade routes that serve dozens of other species. Sarah's voice took on a note of genuine passion. We seek council membership not because we need your protection or your technology. We seek it because we believe that the diversity of perspectives, experiences, and capabilities represented in this chamber could accomplish things that no single species, however advanced, could achieve alone. The chamber was quiet as representatives processed this information. The picture Sarah was painting of humanity was radically different from the assessment they had been given. Instead of primitive savages begging for acceptance, she was describing a rapidly expanding, technologically sophisticated civilization that was actively choosing cooperation over isolation. Councillor Zekthos, his gaseous form now cycling through colors that indicated deep thought, finally spoke. Your words are compelling, human, but they contradict our intelligence reports. Our scouts observed a species struggling with basic interstellar travel, plagued by internal conflicts, and possessing technology barely beyond chemical rockets and primitive electronics. Sarah's smile became predatory. Your scouts observed exactly what we wanted them to observe. Did you really think that a species capable of the expansion and technological development I just described would be unable to detect and misdirect a handful of surveillance vessels? The statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. The High Council's intelligence gathering was legendary in its thoroughness and accuracy. The idea that humans had not only detected their surveillance, but actively deceived, it was almost unthinkable. Impossible, Thesara declared, her crystalline form now pulsing with rapid, agitated light patterns. Our stealth technology is beyond your comprehension. Our scouts are undetectable to primitive sensor arrays. Your stealth technology, Sarah replied calmly, is indeed impressive. Unfortunately for you, we stopped relying on primitive sensor arrays about 10 minutes after we detected your first scout ship. Our detection methods are based on principles that your scout's designers never considered because they assumed they were dealing with a primitive civilization. She touched her wrist control again, and the display showed detailed recordings of Council scout ships conducting surveillance on human worlds. The images were crystal clear, showing not just the ships themselves, but detailed scans of their internal systems and crew complement. We have complete records of 17 separate reconnaissance missions conducted by Council vessels over the past 2 years, Sarah continued. We know the names of your scout commanders, the specifications of their ships, and the exact nature of the intelligence they gathered. More importantly, we know exactly what false information we fed them during their visits. The implications were staggering. If humans had detected and monitored Council surveillance operations while simultaneously feeding false information to those same scouts, it meant their technological capabilities were far more advanced than anyone had suspected. It also meant that humanity's apparent primitiveness was an elaborate and carefully maintained deception. The revelation that humanity had been conducting counterintelligence operations against the Galactic Council created a tension in the chamber that seemed to press against the walls themselves. Representatives whispered frantically among themselves in dozens of languages, their universal translators working overtime to keep up with the sudden explosion of communication. Counselor Eansworm, who had remained silent since his initial dismissive statement, finally stirred. His multidimensional form shifted in ways that hurt to look at directly, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to come from multiple directions at once. "Human," he said, the single word carrying weight that made the chamber fall silent again. "You claim to have deceived our scouts and monitored our operations. You demonstrate technology that can interface with our most secure systems. You speak of capabilities that exceed our intelligence estimates by orders of magnitude, yet you stand before us requesting membership rather than demanding it. Why?" It was the question that cut to the heart of the matter, and Sarah recognized it as such. Everything she had revealed up to this point had been building toward this moment. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the ancient being. "Because," she said, "despite everything I have shown you, humanity genuinely believes in the principles that the Galactic Council was founded upon. Peace through cooperation, progress through diversity, strength through unity. We seek membership not because we need what you can provide, but because we have something valuable to contribute." She gestured toward the assembled representatives. "Look around this chamber, Counselor Eansworm, 47 species, each with unique capabilities and perspectives, working together to maintain peace across thousands of star systems. It is a magnificent achievement that has lasted 10,000 years, but it has also become stagnant." The accusation was delivered quietly, but it hit like a thunderbolt. To accuse the Galactic Council of stagnation was to challenge its most fundamental beliefs about itself. "When was the last time a new species was admitted to this council?" Sarah continued. "When did you last encounter a problem that required genuinely innovative solutions? When did any of you face a challenge that could not be solved by applying established protocols and ancient wisdom?" Uncomfortable shifting rippled through the assembly. The truth was that the council had indeed become extremely stable, perhaps too stable. The last new member species had been admitted over 400 years ago, and most galactic problems were now handled through well-established procedures. "You have achieved something remarkable," Sarah acknowledged. "A peaceful, stable galactic civilization, but stability without growth becomes stagnation, and stagnation leads to decay. Humanity offers something that your peaceful civilization has forgotten how to produce: the chaos of innovation, the disruption of new ideas, and the energy that comes from species that still remember what it means to struggle." Counselor Vexhari's scales were now cycling through rapid color changes, indicating extreme agitation. "You speak of chaos and disruption as if they were virtues. These are the very traits that make your species dangerous to galactic stability." "Are they?" Sarah asked. "Or are they the traits that allow for growth and adaptation? Let me share something with you that your scouts definitely missed during their surveillance." The display above her changed to show a star chart focused on a distant region of space, well beyond the borders of known galactic civilization. Markers indicated several systems with unusual energy signatures. "3 months ago," Sarah began, "our exploration fleets detected something that should concern every species in this chamber. Evidence of an organized, technologically advanced civilization moving systematically through the outer rim, consuming resources and leaving dead systems in their wake." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. This was the first anyone had heard of such a threat. Even the high counselors leaned forward with obvious interest and concern. "We designated them the Devourers," Sarah continued. "They appear to be a collective intelligence that strips systems of all useful materials before moving on. They have already consumed at least 12 star systems that we know of, and they are moving steadily toward inhabited galactic space." The implications hit the assembly like a physical wave. A threat that could consume entire star systems would be beyond the ability of any single species to handle, even the ancient High Council races. "Our analysis suggests they will reach the outer colonies of galactic civilization within 50 to 75 standard years," Sarah said. "That may seem like a long time to species that think in millennia, but it is barely enough time to mount an effective defense against something of this magnitude." Counselor Thesara's crystalline form was now pulsing with rapid, anxious light patterns. Why have we detected no evidence of this threat through our own monitoring systems? Sarah's smile was grim. Because your monitoring systems are designed to detect known types of threats from known types of civilizations. The Devourers use technology based on principles that your sensors were never designed to recognize. They are effectively invisible to traditional detection methods. She touched her wrist control, and the display shifted to show detailed technical readouts. However, human sensor technology, developed through our approach of constant innovation and adaptation, can detect them clearly. We have been tracking their movements for months and developing countermeasures for their technology. The chamber was now completely silent, except for the background hum of life support systems. The idea that a massive threat was approaching galactic space, invisible to the Council's legendary detection networks, but clearly visible to the supposedly primitive humans, was almost too much to process. This is why we seek Council membership, Sarah continued. Not because we need your help to face this threat, but because you need our help to even see it coming. Our chaotic minds have produced detection methods that your logical approaches missed. Our primitive technology has identified weaknesses in Devourer systems that your advanced analysis overlooked. Counselor Mordun's voice rumbled like distant thunder. What you describe would require the combined resources of the entire galactic community to address. No single species, however capable, could mount an effective defense against such a threat. Exactly, Sarah agreed. Which is why we want to work with you rather than around you. Humanity has the innovation and adaptability needed to develop new solutions to unprecedented problems. But we lack the resources, manufacturing capacity, and established infrastructure that the Council has built over 10,000 years. Together, we could create a defense that neither of us could achieve alone. She gestured toward the assembled representatives. But that cooperation requires mutual respect. It requires recognizing that different approaches to problems can be equally valid. It requires accepting that sometimes the newest member of a group can see solutions that experienced members have overlooked. The pause that followed was heavy with unspoken implications. Sarah was essentially saying that humanity's membership could be the key to galactic survival, but only if the Council was willing to treat them as equals rather than primitives seeking guidance. Counselor Zekthos, his form now a steady blue that indicated deep contemplation, spoke carefully. You present us with a choice, human. Accept your species as equals and gain access to capabilities we need, or maintain our current assessment and face this threat without your assistance. No, Sarah said firmly. I present you with an opportunity. The threat is real regardless of your decision about human membership. We will face the Devourers whether we do so as Council members or as an independent human alliance. The question is whether the galaxy faces this challenge united or divided. The statement carried implications that sent a chill through the chamber. Humanity was not begging for protection or assistance. They were offering partnership while making it clear they had alternatives if that partnership was rejected. Ian Swarm's multi-dimensional form shifted again, and his voice carried notes of what might have been admiration. You have maneuvered us into a position where rejecting your membership request would be strategically disadvantageous, regardless of our personal opinions about your species' readiness for galactic citizenship. Sarah nodded acknowledgement. I prefer to think of it as demonstrating that humanity already possesses the strategic thinking and diplomatic sophistication necessary for Council membership. We have identified a mutual challenge, developed partial solutions, and proposed a cooperative approach that benefits all parties. Isn't that exactly what Council membership is supposed to accomplish? The chamber fell into what could only be described as stunned contemplation. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council faced a situation that their established protocols and ancient wisdom were inadequate to address. A supposedly primitive species had not only demonstrated technological sophistication that rivaled their own, but had also identified and begun preparing for a threat that their own systems had completely missed. Counselor Vexhari was the first to break the silence, his scales now displaying a muted pattern that indicated careful thought rather than anger or alarm. Human Ambassador, your presentation has been illuminating. However, you must understand that what you propose represents a fundamental shift in how this council operates. We have maintained stability for 10 millennia precisely because we are careful about admitting new members. Sarah nodded respectfully. I understand your caution, honored counselor, but I would suggest that the very threat I have described demonstrates why that careful approach, while successful in the past, may no longer be sufficient. Static defense against dynamic threats leads inevitably to failure. She moved to a new position within the speaking circle, her movement drawing attention to the holographic displays still floating above them. Allow me to share one more piece of information that might help inform your decision. The display changed to show a detailed tactical analysis of human defensive capabilities. Ship designs, weapon systems, and strategic deployments were laid out in impressive detail. Over the past 6 months, since we first detected the Devourer threat, humanity has redesigned our entire military doctrine, Sarah explained. We have developed new ship classes specifically designed to counter Devourer technology. We have established forward monitoring stations that can track their movements in real time. We have even conducted successful tests of weapons systems designed to disrupt their resource extraction processes. The technical specifications scrolling past on the display were clearly impressive, even by council standards. Several representatives leaned forward to get a better view of the data. But more importantly, Sarah continued, we have done all of this while maintaining our existing commitments to exploration, colonization, and peaceful trade with other species. We have not militarized our entire civilization or abandoned our other goals. We have simply adapted to address a new challenge. Counselor Thesara's crystalline form pulsed with what her species' body language indicated as curiosity mixed with concern. The speed of your adaptation is remarkable. Most species require decades to make significant changes to their military doctrine. How have you accomplished so much in such a short time? Because, Sarah replied, human military doctrine has always been based on the assumption that we would face threats we had never encountered before. We design our forces to be adaptable rather than optimized for specific known challenges. When we discovered the Devourer threat, we already had the conceptual framework in place to address it. She gestured toward the tactical displays. Every other species in the galaxy has had the luxury of developing within the peaceful structure that this council provides. You have had no need to prepare for truly unknown threats, because the Council's strength has prevented such threats from reaching you. Humanity developed in isolation without that protection, so we learned to prepare for dangers we could not imagine. The point was subtle but profound. Humanity's apparent disadvantages, their isolation, their history of conflict, their need to constantly adapt and innovate had actually prepared them for exactly the kind of unprecedented threat that now approached galactic space. Counselor Mordun rumbled thoughtfully. Your argument has merit, human, but you speak only of military capabilities. Galactic Council membership requires more than the ability to fight. It requires wisdom, restraint, and the ability to think beyond immediate survival. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, the expression was genuinely warm rather than diplomatic. I am glad you raised that point, honored counselor, because it allows me to address what I consider the most fundamental misunderstanding about humanity. The display changed again, now showing images from human colonies across their territory. But these were not the industrial or military installations they might have expected. Instead, the images showed parks, art installations, research facilities dedicated to peaceful sciences, and community spaces where humans gathered for purely social activities. You have evaluated humanity based on our response to threats and challenges, Sarah said, but you have ignored how we behave when those threats are absent. Look at our colonies, Counselor Mordun. Every human settlement includes extensive spaces dedicated to art, music, literature, and philosophy. We have universities on worlds that barely have enough population to justify them. We maintain nature preserves on planets we could more efficiently use for resource extraction. She touched another control, and the display showed statistics about human scientific research. 60% of our research efforts are devoted to projects with no immediate practical application. We study stellar formation not because we need to understand stars for survival, but because we are curious about how the universe works. We have anthropological teams studying the cultural development of species that have no strategic value to us whatsoever. The data was compelling. These were not the priorities of a species focused solely on survival and military expansion. They were the interests of a civilization that valued knowledge and beauty for their own sake. Furthermore, Sarah continued, Our rapid expansion across 23 star systems has been accomplished without displacing a single native species. We terraform uninhabitable worlds rather than claiming habitable ones that other species might want. We establish trade relationships based on mutual benefit rather than resource extraction. We share our terraforming technology freely with any species that requests it. Counselor Zekthos, his gaseous form now cycling through colors that indicated growing interest, spoke up. Your terraforming technology is indeed impressive. We have observed the results on several of your colony worlds, but sharing such valuable technology freely seems economically inefficient. Only if you view technology as a commodity to be hoarded rather than a tool for improvement, Sarah replied. Humans learned long ago that shared knowledge benefits everyone, including those who share it. The species we help with terraforming become trading partners, allies, and sources of new ideas. The return on investment in helping others is far greater than the short-term profits from keeping technology secret. The chamber was quiet as representatives processed this information. The picture Sarah was painting of humanity was completely different from their initial assessment. Instead of violent primitives, she was describing a species that valued cooperation, learning, and beauty as much as survival and security. Ian Swarm's multi-dimensional form shifted, and his voice carried overtones that suggested he was accessing memories from deep in his species' history. You remind us of something we had forgotten, human. The early days of this council, when it was still growing and adapting, when new challenges required innovative solutions and fresh perspectives. He paused, seeming to consider his words carefully. We have become comfortable in our success, perhaps too comfortable. The stability we have achieved has come at the cost of the dynamism that created it. Sarah sensed the shift in the chamber's mood and pressed her advantage. Honored counselor, you speak of something that every successful civilization must eventually face, the choice between maintaining what has been achieved and continuing to grow. There is no shame in choosing stability, but there is also no shame in recognizing when circumstances require adaptation. She gestured toward all 5 high counselors. You have built something magnificent here, a galaxy-spanning civilization that has maintained peace and prosperity for 10,000 years. That achievement deserves respect and protection, but protecting it may require accepting that the methods that built it need to evolve to meet new challenges. The holographic display shifted one final time, now showing a combined tactical projection of human and council forces working together against the approaching devourer threat. The synergy was obvious even to casual observers. Human innovation and adaptability, combined with council resources and experience, created possibilities that neither could achieve alone. We do not ask you to change what you have built, Sarah concluded. We ask you to let us help you preserve it by adding our strength to yours. The choice is yours, but the threat is real and time is limited. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never experienced such profound silence. Representatives from 47 species sat motionless, each processing the implications of everything they had heard. The High Council of 5, beings whose collective wisdom had guided galactic civilization for 10,000 years, faced a decision that would reshape everything they had built. Counselor Vexhari was the first to stir, his serpentine form coiling as he considered his words. Ambassador Chen, he said finally, you have presented us with information that challenges our fundamental assumptions about your species. You have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our intelligence estimates. You have identified threats that our own systems failed to detect. Most significantly, you have done all of this while maintaining the diplomatic restraint to request membership rather than demand it. He paused, his scales shifting through complex patterns that indicated deep thought. However, accepting your species into the council based on a single presentation, no matter how compelling, would be unprecedented. We must consider not only your current capabilities, but your long-term compatibility with our established systems. Sarah nodded respectfully. I understand your caution, honored counselor. In fact, I expected it. That is why I have saved one final demonstration for this moment. She touched a control on her wrist, and the chamber's communication systems activated. A new voice filled the chamber, speaking in perfect galactic standard, but with an unmistakably human accent. Council representatives, this is Admiral Maria Santos of the Terran Defense Fleet. I am transmitting from the bridge of the TDF Prometheus, currently positioned 10,000 kilometers above this facility. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. No ship should have been able to approach the Council's homeworld undetected, much less position itself in orbit without triggering dozens of security systems. Admiral Santos, Counselor Thisara's crystalline form pulsed with rapid, agitated patterns. Your presence here violates numerous galactic security protocols. How did you achieve orbital position without detection? The Admiral's voice carried a note of polite amusement. The same way we have been monitoring this entire proceeding, honored Counselor. Human technology has advanced considerably beyond what your intelligence estimates suggest. We have been in position since before Ambassador Chen entered your chamber. Sarah stepped forward within the speaking circle. Honored Counselors, Admiral Santos represents the practical demonstration of everything I have been explaining. The Prometheus is our newest exploration vessel, incorporating all of our recent technological advances. More importantly, she carries a full diplomatic crew representing every major human colony and research facility. The holographic display above the chamber activated again, now showing the exterior view from the Council facility. Hanging in the starfield above them was a ship unlike anything in the galactic databases. Sleek and organic-looking, it seemed to shift and flow as they watched, its hull adapting to optimize its configuration for current conditions. The Prometheus, Sarah explained, represents humanity's approach to exploration and diplomacy. She is simultaneously a research vessel, a diplomatic platform, and a defensive installation. Her crew includes not only military personnel, but scientists, artists, teachers, and cultural specialists. She is designed to make contact with unknown civilizations and establish peaceful relationships whenever possible. Admiral Santos' voice continued the explanation. Our mission parameters prioritize peaceful contact and mutual benefit. However, we are also prepared to defend ourselves and our allies if threatened. The Prometheus incorporates defensive systems that can adapt to any known form of galactic technology, as Ambassador Chen demonstrated earlier with your facility's power grid. The implications hit the chamber like a physical force. If humans could position an advanced warship in orbit around the Council's most secure facility without detection, their technological capabilities were far beyond anything previously estimated. More concerning was the fact that they had done so while conducting diplomatic negotiations rather than simply demanding compliance. Counselor Mordun's rumbling voice carried undertones of what might have been respect. You position a warship above our homeworld while requesting membership in our council. Some might interpret this as a threat. And they would be wrong, Sarah replied firmly. The Prometheus is here as a demonstration of trust, not a threat. We could have continued to conceal our capabilities and allowed you to make your decision based on incomplete information. Instead, we chose to reveal our true strength while still requesting partnership rather than demanding it. She gestured toward the image of the ship above them. Every human vessel carries similar capabilities, honored Counselor. We have the technology to approach any world in galactic space undetected. We have weapons that can interface with and disable most known defensive systems. We have manufacturing capabilities that could expand our fleet exponentially within months. The chamber had fallen completely silent again as the full implications became clear. Humanity possessed the capability to challenge the Council militarily if they chose to do so. The fact that they had instead requested peaceful membership spoke volumes about their actual intentions. Yet here I stand, Sarah continued, requesting admission to your council rather than simply taking what we want. Because despite all our capabilities, we recognize that cooperation achieves more than conquest. We want to build something together that is greater than anything any of us could accomplish alone. Counselor Ian Swerm's multidimensional form shifted in ways that seemed to express profound contemplation. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that indicated he was drawing on memories from the very founding of the Council. 10,000 years ago, he said slowly, this council was formed by 5 species who possessed the wisdom to recognize that their individual strengths could be combined into something greater than the sum of their parts. We were not the oldest species in the galaxy at that time, nor the most numerous. But we were the first to understand that true power comes not from the ability to dominate, but from the ability to inspire others to join willingly in common cause. He paused, his form stabilizing into a configuration that suggested he had reached a decision. Humanity has demonstrated that they understand this principle. They have the power to take what they want, but they choose instead to offer partnership. They have identified threats that we cannot see, but they seek to share their knowledge rather than hoard it. They have achieved remarkable growth in isolation, but they choose cooperation over continued independence. The ancient being's attention focused on Sarah with an intensity that was almost physical. Most importantly, they have shown us something we had forgotten in our 10,000 years of success. That stagnation is the price of refusing to adapt, and that sometimes the newest voice in a conversation can offer the wisest counsel. Counselor Zektho's gaseous form had stabilized into a warm golden color that indicated approval and acceptance. "The evidence is overwhelming," he declared. "Humanity possesses the technological sophistication, strategic wisdom, and diplomatic restraint necessary for council membership. More than that, they offer capabilities and perspectives that we desperately need." One by one, the other counselors added their agreement. Thisara's crystalline form pulsed with steady, approving light. Mordun's rumbled acceptance carried undertones of genuine respect. Even Vexhari's scales had shifted to patterns that indicated reluctant but sincere acknowledgement of humanity's qualifications. "By unanimous decision of the High Council," Eansworm announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, "humanity is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities such membership entails." The chamber erupted in sounds of approval from dozens of species. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with success. When she opened them again, her expression was serious despite the triumph. "Honored counselors," she said, "I accept membership on behalf of humanity with gratitude and humility. We will prove worthy of the trust you have placed in us. But our first priority must be preparing for the Devourer threat. We have perhaps 50 years to build a defense capable of protecting everything we have all worked to create." Admiral Santos' voice filled the chamber once more. "The Prometheus is prepared to begin immediate coordination with Council defense forces. We have detailed intelligence on Devourer capabilities and proposed countermeasures ready for immediate implementation. With your permission, honored counselors, we can begin joint planning sessions within the hour." As representatives began moving toward the chamber exits, already deep in urgent discussions about the challenges ahead, Sarah remained in the speaking circle. She looked up at the display showing the Prometheus hanging silently above them and allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had been insulted, dismissed, and underestimated. They had responded not with anger or violence, but with patient demonstration of their true capabilities. They had turned insult into opportunity, contempt into respect, and rejection into acceptance. Most importantly, they had achieved their goal without compromising their principles. They had proven that strength without wisdom was meaningless, but that wisdom without strength was powerless. The galaxy now faced an unprecedented threat, but it would face that threat united, with humanity's innovation and adaptability adding new strength to the ancient wisdom of the Galactic Council. Sarah touched her wrist control one final time, sending a message that would reach every human colony within hours. "Mission accomplished. Humanity has come home to the stars."